Hobson. Fine.
Thank you, counsel. Defense?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. At the beginning of today's trial, my co-counsel, Mr. Tedford, he came before me, and he asked that while you listen to all of the testimony and saw all the pieces of evidence laid before you, that you look and you listen for three things: a sibling, a suit, and a setup. And despite the plaintiff's best efforts at keeping you from hearing from either Ashley Connell or Shannon Shahid on the stand today, well, you've heard plenty about their actions leading up to Mr. Bancroft's death. Enough to know that Miss Shannon Shahid, well, she isn't here today for justice. She's here for a jackpot. You see, members of the jury, Miss Shahid only recently found out that she was only getting 5% of her late father's estate. And while $20 million might seem like a lot of money to someone like you or to me, for someone who has spent her entire life being funded by her billionaire father, well, it wasn't enough. And it was certainly a far cry from the fair amount that she told her brother that she expected upon her father's death. And so Miss Shahid turned to the last legal loophole available to her, the Slater statute. You see, the Slater statute is a great law here in the state of Midlands that stops any individual that plays a hand in the death of another from receiving any of the benefits or inheritance from that person. But it's not enough for Miss Shahid, or any plaintiff really, to just accuse defendants like Taylor Hobson of such heinous actions. Instead, they have to prove it. That's to say, it was the plaintiff's job today to bring forth relevant facts and testimony to show that their version of events, of what happened aboard the Mid-Riverina Express, was the most likely to have happened. Now, members of the jury, we saw through testimony laid today that they simply were unable to meet that limit because of three key elements that they'd like you to ignore: a sibling, a suit, and a setup. So let's go ahead and walk through each of those pieces one at a time, starting with the sibling. Now, despite the fact that Miss Shannon Shahid wasn't even aboard the Mid-Riverina Express at the same time as Avery Bancroft, well, we heard plenty of testimony about her today, and that was for good reason. You see, members of the jury, Shannon Shahid and Avery Bancroft, they had a rather complicated relationship. A relationship complicated by money. Because Shannon Shahid really only ever reached out to her father about money, which you heard from multiple witnesses today. Her own brother, Taylor Hobson, and especially from Kirby Doolittle, Mr. Bancroft's personal assistant, who showed you some of Mr. Bancroft's bank statements. You see, there was a time when Avery Bancroft sent Shannon Shahid $50, but we heard on the stand today that what Miss Shahid actually wanted was $50,000. The reason for the difference between those two amounts was, as Miss Doolittle said herself, Avery Bancroft wanted to send a message that he wasn't going to be Miss Shahid's personal ATM anymore. But that just didn't sit right with Miss Shahid. And so you heard from Mr. Hobson how obsessed she became with Mr. Bancroft's will, begging him to update her the minute he caught wind of any changes. And so, when she does catch wind of those changes, when she hears that Mr. Bancroft plans to cut both her and her brother out of the will, well, she knows she has to act. She knows she has to contact her good friend Ashley Connell aboard the Mid-Riverina Express and call in a special favor. Because in the plaintiff's own words, if Ashley Connell caught any wind of change to Avery Bancroft's will, well, Miss Shahid was going to need her to take care of it. Miss Shahid told you herself. The next time she was going to see Avery Bancroft would be at his own funeral. And so that brings us to the suit. Ashley, you see, you heard from multiple witnesses on that stand today about just how prevalent this billion-dollar lawsuit was on the forefront of just about everyone's mind aboard the Mid-Riverina Express. We especially know that it was on Ashley Connell's mind, as you heard from Bailey Connell's own deposition, her own son, that she confronted Avery Bancroft about this very lawsuit, that she demanded, begged him to drop it. But Avery Bancroft said no. He wanted that $1 billion. And as you heard from Bailey Connell, well, he had just never seen his mother so angry. And so when Ashley Connell got that phone call from her good friend and psychic Shannon Shahid, well, it seems like an opportunity too good to be true. A chance to take out both of their problems while pitting it all on Taylor Hobson. And so after receiving that call from Shannon Shahid with that $1 billion lawsuit fresh on Miss Connell's mind, well, she goes to Dr. Hillary Edmond. And she asks her questions that you heard Miss Edmond repeat on the stand. Where can I find a bottle of potassium supplement? And if I'm not going to be there, do you think anyone would buy it for me? Miss Connell is the only person aboard the Mid-Riverina Express that even expresses interest in buying potassium supplement. And yet it's the plaintiff who wants you to believe it's just a big coincidence that right after ending that call with Shannon Shahid, that she wanted it. That, members of the jury, brings us to our setup. And I actually want to approach this segment from Mr. Hobson's perspective. You heard on the stand today that Mr. Hobson boarded the Mid-Riverina Express expecting a romantic getaway with his boyfriend Kelly. He wanted to propose in the Australian outback. And he told you himself he was nervous when he saw Avery Bancroft aboard the same train. But even through their fighting and their bickering, he was hopeful. Hopeful that this might finally be the time that him and his father could make up, could grow closer, and that he could invite Avery Bancroft to be a part of his upcoming nuptials. But Mr. Hobson never got that chance. It was taken away from him by three things: a sibling, a suit, and a son. Now, members of the jury, the plaintiff wants you to focus on three different elements in today's case. I actually wrote them down during Mr. Travers' opening. You see, the first thing they wanted you to focus on was a plan. And they actually promised you that when Kirby Doolittle took the stand, she'd tell you all about this plan. But the only thing we heard was that patience is a dish best served cold. Well, members of the jury, we showed you a much more concrete one. Text messages between Ashley Connell and Shannon Shahid in the months leading up to Ashley Connell and Avery Bancroft crossing paths aboard the Mid-Riverina Express. And they talk several times, you can look for yourself, not only about this $1 billion lawsuit, but about how to get rid of it and how to get rid of Avery Bancroft altogether. You see, members of the jury, what we heard today was that a sibling manipulated a $1 billion lawsuit into a setup for murder. And that's why we actually agree with the plaintiff that there's no way what happened aboard the Mid-Riverina Express could be a coincidence. And that's because of these text messages. There's no way that when Shannon Shahid said, "Don't worry, everything will work out. Enjoy the Mid-Riverina Express." Now that was calculated. And that's why you must find Mr. Hobson not lying. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Is there a rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor. May I inquire as to how much time I have left?
I have 15 minutes.
May I proceed?
You may.
Members of the jury, the defense just stood up here and told you that Shannon Shahid was funded by her father. You didn't hear a single bit of evidence about that today. The only thing you heard was $50. members of the jury, they said she wanted 50,000. How much did the defendant get? Because from 2009 to 2023, the defendant was getting that $50,000 every single month. $7.5 million. And that wasn't a jackpot enough for this defendant. No, he wanted more. $400 million. So the defense was right. There was a sibling. The defendant. There was a setup. Killing his father. And there was a suit. Today's case. Don't let him get away with it. Find Taylor Hobson liar.
All right, thank you, counsel. With that, case will be submitted to the jury. And the ballots.